But there is so much emphasis or so much noise in the media about people coming in without emphasis or noise about the people who are leaving. Hello beautiful people, welcome back to the Canada Info channel. My name is Wolo. I am a regulated Canadian immigration consultant based in New Brunswick, Canada, still in Manitoba. How is the snow in Manitoba? I hear that snow has started falling in some places, but it has not started falling in Winnipeg, which is why I'm enjoying New Brunswick, because we've not had snow and the weather has been fair. Anyway, if you're new to this channel, please subscribe. I talk about immigration to Canada and life in Canada. And then for my old subscribers, thank you so much for being loyal to this channel. Okay, so you've already seen the title. I just felt I should just talk more about it, and then I'm going to play a video for you to watch where the inspiration of this whole video came from. One thing about Canada is that I feel it's a revolving door, and the reason why I say Canada is a revolving door is because a lot of people come in, stay for a while, and then leave. But there is so much emphasis or so much noise in the media about people coming in without emphasis or noise about the people who are leaving, which I feel that there's some level of deception going on, because right now the noise about, oh, there are too many people, we are going to put a cap on immigration, too many temporary residents, blah blah blah, is putting pressure on the housing market, is putting pressure on the infrastructure, is putting pressure on healthcare. There's so much noise, but people are not actually talking about the record number of people who are actually leaving Canada after immigrating, after getting their permanent residency status. You don't have so much noise about that. So once I play this video, I would come back and explain my thoughts around this.
Says economic migrants who were chosen by the government to come to Canada are leaving the country in record numbers. The study was commissioned by the Institute for Canadian Citizenship. That's an organization that encourages immigrants to become citizens. Among the report's findings, French-speaking immigrants who came to Quebec in Ontario are more likely to leave Canada than their English-speaking counterparts. The country's biggest cities, Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver, see high turnover rates of immigrants. The cities serve as hubs where newcomers adjust to life here before moving somewhere else. And those who immigrate to Atlantic provinces are more likely to leave Canada within the first 7 years of arrival. But if they stay longer, they're more likely to remain in Canada for the long haul. We're now joined by Daniel Bernhard, CEO of the Institute for Canadian Citizenship, which authored the report, and he joins us from Ottawa. Thanks so much for being here, Daniel.
Thanks for having me.
So, do the findings of this report surprise you?
Yes and no. I mean, we published the first edition of this report last year. This year we find, of course, that outward migration has risen to record highs in 2020, which is the last year that we have data for. I can only imagine that this year, once the data are available, the problem will be even worse. But I think what we learned this year is that we have a lot more color and a lot more detail around the data than we had before. And so there were some surprises. For example, the difference in the number of francophones that are departing. 20% of immigrants to Canada will leave in the long term, but among francophones it's 35%. Things like this really did jump out at us, but fortunately these standout points also give us opportunities to intervene and to act. Now that we have more information, we can take more strategic action to reverse the outflow of immigrants who are hand-selected to address some of Canada's biggest concerns. When they leave, we lose. And so this is, I think, hopefully a helpful intervention in that effort.
Any more of the key things that stood out to you the most?
Well, as you mentioned in your setup, economic immigrants are the most likely to leave the country. We also found that temporary foreign workers, who are much maligned these days, actually are among the most likely to stay in the country once they obtain permanent residence, which was an interesting finding. And I think you alluded to this earlier in your setup. Canada is a really diverse country. I don't just mean ethnically, but by region. We have a lot of different circumstances at play, and the retention performance is very, very different across the region. So like you said, in Atlantic Canada, most of the people who leave really, really quickly. They leave from outside the big cities. In Ontario and Quebec, they leave from inside the big cities. So I think this really calls for a diversified approach to retention for different categories of immigrants, for different language groups, and for different regions of the country. It's a complex federation, and we need to approach it with the flexibility, adaptability, and the localized sensibility that can really allow us to combat this problem effectively.
So there's a lot of interesting data points here, but are there any answers to the question of why? Why are we seeing increasing numbers of immigrants leaving the country?
So this study does not talk about why, but another study that the Institute for Canadian Citizenship has done with Ipsos, which is a poll of over 20,000 verified adult immigrants, shows that housing affordability is the main reason driving immigrants from Canada. And of course, this is ironic because immigrants are blamed for Canada's housing affordability crisis. Incorrectly, in my view, but that is the prevailing perspective, even though mistaken right now. I think we're looking at a situation where immigrants to Canada are more and more skilled than ever before. When my parents came, they spoke very little English, they had very little education, the proverbial $5 in their pocket. Today, we're taking people with advanced skills and degrees who speak English and French impeccably well, and who have global options. And so Canada's immigration posture is based on the idea that immigration is a manifestation of our generosity, that we are just admitting people who are fleeing destitution for a better life. We haven't caught up with the fact that actually we need immigrants more than immigrants need us on balance. And if we are going to lower our rates because we think that this is the answer to some of the homegrown policy problems that we've developed over generations, I think we're up for a rude awakening. If we reduce the number of immigrants, for example, by 10%, we might reduce the number of people in the hospital waiting room by 10%, but we'll reduce the number of people in the hospital staff room by 30 or 40%. And so this is the math that Canada needs to do. It's sensible and fair to talk about how many people are coming and how we select them and all of that. But we need also to take into account the number who are able to stay and contribute their talent and energies to our success in the long term and not leave for another country and contribute to their success.
And if that's your position, that we should be looking at getting more immigrants into the country and that they should be encouraged to stay here, how do you think Canada should go about doing that?
Well, I'm not talking about more or fewer. I'm simply saying that, we have significant objective needs in areas like early childhood education, where a shortage of workers is preventing mothers from getting back into the workforce after having children. There's a daycare where my son actually attends, which has an empty room in it because they can't find a staff member to work in it. And they're actually a unionized place that pays very, very well. In healthcare, we have documented shortages in all kinds of professions. Home construction is another one where we're facing incredible amounts of pending retirement at the time when we need to be ramping up our building. So we can adjust the levels of people coming into the country all we want, but those needs do not disappear. Who are disappearing are actually the immigrants who are hand-selected to fulfill those needs. So we need to take both supply and demand into account and to recognize that, yes, there are opportunities for reform of the system to make it smarter, but we need to make sure that the people who are selected to come here are able to succeed. Opening the door is not enough. And this is not just something for the federal government to pay attention to, provincial governments, but also all of us as employers, as neighbors, as colleagues can provide a welcome experience if people really do have the skills and opportunity to contribute to Canada's success and to address some of our shortcomings and our failings really over a long term. We all have a vested interest in ensuring that they are satisfied here, that they succeed, and that they stay.
There are lots of Canadians who are living in the US and are now naturalized citizens of the United States, because the US has a better economic outlook and the US dollars is much more higher than the Canadian dollars. So, they just feel it doesn't make any sense staying in Canada if they can make more money in the US. So they move to the US. Doctors, nurses, tech professionals, you name it, all sorts of people just immigrate to the US to get better economic opportunities. So while people are rushing to see how they can get their stay in Canada, there are people who are not interested in staying in Canada. They just want to get a passport and move to the US because they feel that is where they get more money and pay less taxes. So that's number one. Number two reason is the climate. The weather is very harsh. Not all parts of Canada though. There are some parts of Canada that are very cold, like my lovely Manitoba, very cold, and plenty snow. And then there are some parts of Canada that are also cold. So, but in general, the climate is very harsh during winter and very long periods of cold, like from October, November until March, April. The weather is pretty much cold. So, I mean, not everybody likes the cold. So they find a reason to say, I'm tired of this cold, it's time for me to get out of Canada. Number three reason why people leave Canada, family or personal reasons. And I noticed that a lot of Indians, even if they want to come to Canada as permanent residents, not all of them are willing to actually give up their Indian citizenship, because India does not allow for dual citizenship. So a lot of them just remain permanent residents, and once it is time, they get tired, they just move back to India. And they do that a lot because of family reasons, wanting to bring up their children, where their parents and grandparents are. You know, they have this communal life, and lots of Indians do that. They go back for family reasons, to just take care of their family and be where their family members are. So that's another reason. So the healthcare system in Canada has been very bad lately. Very, very bad lately. And people just like ask themselves, why am I in a society where even if it is free to get healthcare, it takes almost 13 hours or 14 hours to see a doctor, even when you are in the emergency section of the hospital. So healthcare reasons just make people feel that, I mean, it's not worth it. If I can go where I can see a doctor as fast as possible, get my medication done, get my treatment done, even if I'm going to pay some money for it, I don't mind being in that environment. So yeah, and I resonate with that perfectly, because it's kind of annoying, like very, very annoying, that we have lots of immigrant doctors who are in Canada who cannot practice, yet the government cannot even find a way to make these people start practicing medicine in Canada. But what they are doing is to go and poach from countries that have found a structure to integrate immigrant medical doctors. Canada is worse when it comes to doing this. I don't understand why Canada would want to go and poach medical doctors from the UK, when the UK has successfully found a system to integrate immigrant medical doctors, immigrant nurses, immigrant healthcare professionals to practice seamlessly in their country. But what Canada does is to go and poach those people from the UK. You will see them advertising, oh, we are going to the UK, oh, we are going to France, oh, we are going to look for doctors in New Zealand and Australia. Yet, there are lots of immigrant medical doctors who are in Canada who are unable to get their license. It does not make sense. Like, it does not make any sense to me. So this is one of the reasons, if the healthcare system is facing so much pressure, I mean, people will just get tired and just decide to go back to their home country to go and get medical care. And once they get medical care, they just stay there because they don't see any reason to even return to Canada in the first place. It's sad. Very, very sad. Another reason I will mention is the tax burden. The tax burden. Hey, we don't want to go there. When people are shouting, I'm earning 6 figures, I'm earning 6 figures, please ask them, which 6 figures? Is this 6 figures in gross or 6 figures in net income? I mean 6 figures in gross income or 6 figures in net income. A lot of people don't talk about it. So you're earning 6 figures in gross income. By the time they take off the taxes, you're already earning 5 figures in net income. So the tax burden is huge, but like, you know, of course, the tax burden is used to fund a lot of these social amenities, social infrastructure that we don't pay for. But I feel that they could balance it in such a way that the taxes are reduced, not to be taxing and taxing more people. So at some point, even looking forward to earning more money does not make sense, because you're going to be paying more money in taxes and you'll still be in the same income bracket of somebody who is not even stressing himself. So the tax burden is a discouraging factor why a lot of people just say they are tired of Canada and they are leaving Canada. So this last one, I know is controversial. People will say Canada has a fairly good government, kind of. But you know, people leave Canada just for political reasons. People who are here say, oh, this government is doing this, is doing that, is doing this, is doing that. I just said, okay, you know what? I would leave Canada for political reasons. the same way the US citizens are leaving US for political reasons to Canada. It's very funny. US citizens said when Trump comes to power, they will leave US and come and stay in Canada. Why Canadian citizens do not like the current government and say they want to leave Canada because of political reasons? It's just funny. At the end of the day, it's just a revolving door, right? There is so much pressure for people to come in, and people who have come in are currently dissatisfied with the current situation of Canada, and they are making efforts to want to leave. Now, one thing you should know about leaving Canada, there are several aspects of leaving Canada. Do you want to leave and you just want to forget about Canada and still hold on the passport? Or do you still want to have ties to Canada? When I mean have ties to Canada, you will still be taxed based on your world income. So even if you leave from Canada to the US, you leave from Canada to Nigeria, you leave from Canada to wherever you want to go to, there will still be tax burden depending on what you have. So there is what we call departure tax. If you don't want the Canadian government to still tax your world income, it means that you have to disconnect yourself from everything in Canada. You will not own a property in Canada. You will sell everything. You will not own anything in Canada. Then that way they cannot tax your income wherever you go to. But if you still have some properties in Canada, you have rental properties, you have one or two things bringing you back to Canada, it means you still pay taxes on your world income. So you have to be careful when you are deciding on if you want to leave Canada. If you want to leave Canada, then you want to leave permanently and not have anything to do with Canada except having the passport, or do you want to leave and still have some form of ties? Some people want to leave and have some form of ties. Why? Because they want to take advantage of the healthcare system, the free healthcare system that is currently under so much pressure. I'll give an example. There was one lady who had, she was a nurse. She immigrated to the US to go and work in the US. And then while in the US, she had cancer. And when she had cancer, it was very expensive to treat cancer in the US. So she had to come back to Canada. She didn't completely cut her ties from Canada. She had to come back to Canada to come and take advantage of the free healthcare system in Canada to, get well. So this is what people consider when they want to leave. They want to leave, but some people will say, there might be a reason for me to return back to Canada in the future. So instead of me cutting ties completely, I will not cut ties completely. I will still come back and enjoy some of the benefits of Canada. While some people, this is what they do. Some people live close to the US border because they want to take advantage of working in the US and living in Canada, because they like the living in Canada slow lifestyle, but they like the money of the US. While some people are living in Canada and working remotely for US companies and earning in US dollars. So you have a variety of people with options about staying in Canada and not staying in Canada. And you have snowbirds as well who travel during winter to Florida, to Mexico and all of that. And, just want to take advantage of being in a warmer climate. And funny enough, when I was coming to Canada, the plan I had was 6 months in Canada, 6 months outside Canada, 6 months in Canada, 6 months in Nigeria. I had that plan, but life is lifing. Life is lifing. So before I end this video, I want to ask you a question. If you are in Canada, would you want to leave? And if you want to leave, would you want to cut ties completely, or would you still want to maintain ties? The future benefit of coming back to Canada. If you want to cut ties, please, I would like to read it in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in my next video. Bye-bye.
We will trust, be the knowing that we will see the rise. Oh Canada, oh Canada.